Hello and welcome everybody to today's Authors at Google Talk. Today we are incredibly excited to welcome Marcia Reynolds.
Thank you.
To talk to us about her latest book, The Discomfort Zone, How Leaders Turn Difficult Conversations into Breakthroughs. So welcome Marcia, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks. So what I'd like to propose and demonstrate for you today is the concept that the best leaders make us feel unsure of ourselves. Now, I know that might sound a little counterintuitive, because don't we like it when leaders or anyone makes us feel good about ourselves and what we do? But there are those moments where we get really stuck in our thinking. We all do. And we see things a certain way, and it's very difficult for us to see other possibilities. Or those times when we just kind of resist new ideas or doing something, not even sure why we resist. But we do it in a way then that we can't really evaluate what's right and wrong in a situation. In those moments, it's when a leader can say something and ask a question that truly makes us stop and think about how we think. It's in those moments of uncertainty to where we're actually most open to learning. It's in those moments of uncertainty where we can actually see what is my blind spot and the source of my resistance. That even though when I see them, I may not feel comfortable, I might not even be happy, I might feel a little embarrassed, I might be sad that I hadn't seen this before, I might even be angry. But then I grow. So if you were to recall a time in your life when maybe somebody said something to you that changed your life, what was it they said that truly made you see yourself in the world in an entirely different way? What did they say and how did you feel? I mean, maybe it was a parent. Maybe it was that teacher that made you raise your hand. Or that grumpy neighbor that made you realize you were being a jerk. Or a sports coach, a friend. Maybe it even was a manager. What did they say? And really in that moment, how did you feel? You know, I've been asking this question in my leadership classes for over a decade, and they always say it was that person who really saw me, who really understood me, and also knew how I was holding myself back. And then they always say that, yeah, they said something that challenged me in a way that in the moment it didn't feel good. But it made a difference to me. And from that moment, I saw myself and the world differently. And these people aren't always people that we like. In fact, I had this boss. He was not even near the top of my list of most liked bosses, more close to the bottom. We always fought about ideas, and when my projects would take off and I'd be successful, somehow he got credit for the success. And you know, in the 5 years I worked for him, he never pronounced my name correctly. Even though I always said it's Marcia. But he still had this way of hearing me, of seeing me. He knew what really drove me, what motivated me to move forward. But he also knew how I was holding myself back. And he could say these things that would make me stop and really evaluate, you know, what I was really doing in a way that I could see things differently. Like, for example, there was this time that I was complaining about the executive staff, and they had reprioritized my project down the list again, and I was so angry, and how come they couldn't see why this was so important? And he says to me, you know, you couldn't quit fighting now you've made it. What do you mean? I mean, as we were talking about before we started, I am a small woman, and this was a semiconductor company, primarily men, and I had to fight my way up. Fighting had served me. Who would I be if I wasn't a fighter? But then he said, do you think there's a way, instead of trying to force them to see what you want, that you can inspire them to see what you see? I really valued people who inspired me. And I really thought I could do that I did that with the people who worked for me. I'd never thought that I could do that with these people. Why not? But I couldn't see it until he made the statement and asked the question, which didn't change my behavior and change my results. Then there was this other time I was complaining about my coworkers. Seems like I complained an awful lot, you know. But we were doing this project, and I was saying they weren't pulling their weight, and he says to me, "Wow, it seems as if everyone disappoints you." Again, I paused. And he says to me, "Do you think anyone will ever be good enough for you?" And I thought about that for days. And I realized it was actually the source of all my troubles with all my relationships. So, you know, it wasn't even work that he changed, but he totally changed my life with one reflection, one question. And so when I looked at that, I thought, was this just like random statements of this uncensored boss? So when I left that company, I went out, I was trained as a coach, and I had gotten involved with emotional intelligence, and I was fascinated by the brain, and then I went on to do my doctoral work in psychology, just to really learn what are we learning now that we have access to really seeing how the brain works. And my second master's was in learning psychology, I mean, that was decades ago, and now I realize what we thought then of how we learned is very different now, that there's different learning. So what I want to share with you today briefly, I want to look at what type of learning are we talking about. If you really want to change people's behavior, particularly when they're stuck or they're resistant, how do you actually do that? So we're going to look at what is it, the conditions you're trying to create. And then I also want to look at how do you know what to say that's going to make them see things differently and then change their life. So when we look at learning, I said to you that, you know, I learned early on that there was a way that we could help people to learn information. But the problem with just using the thinking brain is that we're competing with a whole lot of things. So if I tell you, I really think you should do this, you might say, yeah, great, and you write it down, but then how many things compete with that? And within 5-10 minutes, you've probably forgotten what I've said. So even reading things, how many articles do you read online a day? At the end of the day, if I asked you, what did you learn today? Would you even remember most of it? I mean, all those tests you took in school, you had to memorize things, and if I gave it to you now, would you pass? You know? Because this is short-term memory we're dealing with, and that, in fact, if you want people to remember, then it's got to have a strong emotion attached to the information. They have to say, wow, this is fabulous, this is going to be great for me, it's going to truly help me achieve my goals. If they don't, it's not going to embed, they won't remember it. It has to be a big impact in order for it to get into long-term memory. So information-based learning and just telling people what to do is really an inefficient way of getting them to change. So then we have like the traditional old management technique of I'll scare you into changing, right? And people still do this, and parents do, you better do this or else. The problem with this is that fear-based learning gets lodged back here where we learn automatic pilot stuff, the motor skills. Like you learn how to drive a car. How many of you drive? So how often do you drive and you've been driving for, oh gosh, miles, and you realize you haven't thought about driving? Okay, raise your hand if this has ever happened to you. Look around, you're driving on the road with all these people. Thank God for automatic pilot, that we can do this without thinking. But that's the thing. If I learn based on fear, then it gets lodged there, and I learn to do things one way. And it no longer has access to my long-term memory and my creative source. So I learn how to do things, and under pressure, I'm really good at doing things one way. But then you ask me to adapt and do things differently, and you know what? I can't. It's very hard for me to then change the way I do it because I learned it under fear. It's almost as if I have to learn an entirely new way of doing things. And then people wonder, why are these people so resistant to change? Because they learned under fear in the first place. So this is also a very inefficient way of teaching people and getting them to change their behavior. So the third way that we have to change people's behavior actually works with the middle brain, where we have long-term memory and we can be creative. But there's a structure here that is really important. And this is the most important thing in changing someone's behavior, especially it has to do with how I relate to others. And this thing is called ego. And ego isn't bad. Ego is how I see myself and the world around me. And I need this because I can't be stopping all day long and saying, who am I? Where am I? I have to kind of know who I am and what I do so I can function. So it's a survival process. So all of our experiences and our beliefs, they create these frames that we operate by. Well, the brain dearly protects this. This is why when people feel a little threatened of who I am, are you threatening me? Are you judging me for my credibility? That I get defensive right away. And if I say, oh, don't be so defensive, what happens? You get even more defensive. Because we dearly protect this. But you see, when you're dealing with someone, the best thing you can do then is, can you break down one of those defenses to where I actually stop and think about, is how I see myself in this situation really serving me? And how I see the world. So what we're trying to do in order to change people's behavior is we have what's called insight-based learning. So when my boss said to me, will anyone ever be good enough for you? It's like, boom, he broke through that defense, got right into my brain, and my brain had to stop and go, oh, wow, what you thought was true maybe isn't, maybe something else. So it starts rewiring. And all of a sudden I have a new awareness of, I wasn't really doing a good thing for myself. And my view of myself and the world then changed forever. What's really wonderful about this is once that changes, that structure, then my perspective changes forever as well, and so does my behavior. So self-directed, discovery-based learning is permanent. So I don't necessarily go back to old bad behavior. So when we're dealing with people, especially when they're resistant or they're stuck, this is the most efficient way of helping them to learn. And that's why I'm sharing this with you. That's what you're aiming for. So behavior learning could be that you tell me something that totally supports how I see myself in the world, and I go, yeah, that's great. But again, if I'm stuck in seeing things and I'm not serving myself, or I'm resistant to seeing something else, then you need to help me break down the barrier that's protecting my sense of self and the world, so I can see myself in a bigger way and the world around me that gives me more possibility. So we do this by maybe saying something that's surprising. I remember the first time someone said to me, you know, you really intimidate people. I'm like, me? I'm so short, I do that. That was surprising, made me think. Or a disruptive reflection, where you just hold up the mirror and allow people to look at themselves, or a powerful question. These are the things that make me then stop and question myself. And in that moment where I question myself is when there's that great opportunity that I may learn something new. So it's in this moment of discomfort that learning truly happens. And again, when my brain breaks down, it's a really awesome process. I'm sure you've seen it, where you say something to someone and there really is a breakdown. So what happens is they will stare at you for a moment because their brain is going, oh, something new here, and it takes a moment to rewire, and so it's almost like a trance state. But it's very similar. If you've ever seen a baby see something new for the very first time, what do? They just stare at it. And then when the brain kind of formulates meaning, then they either cry or they laugh, depending on what, if they think it's a threat or if it's funny. It's the same thing with adults. We kind of like, huh? And so this is a moment, if you create this, you have to let it happen. Don't talk. Just let the silence happen. Let their brain rewire. And then they'll probably have an emotional reaction where they may feel awkward, they may laugh at themselves, they may be embarrassed, they may be sad, they could be angry. But it'll dissipate. You just hold on. You just let them work through it. And then you say, so what have you now discovered? What is true for you now? And let them tell you what they now see. And once we change our view of who I think I am in the world around me, then my behavior changes as well. And again, it's far more efficient than you trying to tell someone your great advice and brilliant ideas, and it just doesn't stick. So the question then is, how do we know what to say that's going to create this moment? Where does that come from? So a friend of mine was doing her doctoral dissertation where she was interviewing all these coaches, master coaches, that seem to be able to do this almost naturally. And she asked them, what exactly is it that you do that creates that moment where people go, oh, wow, and they change? And all of them said, well, I access my intuition. But the difficult thing, when she asked them, so how do you do that? Was like, oh, well, I don't know, you just listen. And they had a very difficult time articulating what exactly they did. But if you can't articulate it, you can't really teach it. And so I said, I've got to codify this. I have to bring it to a place to where people know what it is they're doing. Because otherwise, if I don't do that, then most people will judge it as kind of fluffy, weird, or something that belongs to psychics and wizards, or maybe women, women's intuition. But frankly, I didn't find any research that really says we have more intuition than men. It's just sometimes women trust their intuition a little bit more. But we all have it, don't we? I mean, how many times have you made a decision that you now regret and said to yourself, I should have trusted my gut. My gut told me to do this, I didn't do it. Or you did something and you knew it was because other people told you to do it, but it wasn't right, and you say, I should have trusted my heart. We all have this intuition, but we don't listen to it, we don't access it. Because we have this chatty brain up here that also censors, filters, analyzes, critiques, and kind of drowns out this information that we get from the rest of our nervous system. And even though people say, well, if you listen deeply, you'll hear more than the words, but what is it we're really doing? In fact, it was Sherlock Holmes who does this quite well in really seeing beyond what most people see. He admonished Watson by saying, you see, but you do not observe. The distinction is clear. So I went out and I said, okay, so let me look at, so I think it has to do with the heart and the gut and the nervous system. And I found quite a bit of research, and it's initiated from Michael Gerson's work in his book, The Second Brain. And there was two things that really stood out for me. One was he said, there's like 1 billion stars in the sky, and if you take all of those and put them in your head, you got 1 billion neurons, right? But if you take 100 million of those neurons and put them right here in your gut, that's how many neurons you have. And there's every class of neurotransmitter that's in your brain that are making connections. Every class of neurotransmitter in your brain is also in your gut. Now, I think that's far more than you need to digest food. So there's processing, your gut is getting hits and processing information all the time and sending signals to your brain. Again, it doesn't have language, so it has to go to the brain. And then I found Andrew Armour's work And his is the work that was the foundation for the Heart Math Institute. And he documented how the heart takes in information, processes it, and sends signals to the brain. And he coined the term heart math. And Paul Pearsall, a heart surgeon, documented how many memories transplant patients had that belonged to the donors. So, yeah, the heart even remembers, even when it goes to someone else. The heart has memory. So I looked at these and I said, well, that's really the nervous system. And then Gershon said, in a fetus, it's all one, it's all clumped together like clay. And as the baby develops, the gut and the heart separates, but it's still connected by the vagus nerve. The nervous system is really one organ, even though it's separate. So we have the gut and the heart and the brain. And so I looked at this, that the nervous system is really the head, the heart, and the gut are our primary processing centers. And honestly, that's what intuition is. If we can stop and listen to those, what might we hear differently than if we're only listening to our brain? So I want you to imagine right now that you're dealing with a big decision. So if you can think about something that you're trying to decide on, and it could be a life decision, it could even be what you're going to do this weekend, but see if you can't just put in your brain something that you have to decide. And what I'm going to do is I want to do a quick visualization with you. I want to see if you can listen to your three centers and what might come up differently from each one. So this visualization that I use, I teach it to coaches in order to listen differently to other people, but you can use it for yourself and practice this way. And so you can do it with me or you can do it however you like. I learned this from a sports psychologist in helping athletes to get in the zone, because this really is a being present process. So I want you to, if you can, to be here. If you've got a lot of other things going on, if you could just give this a couple of minutes, if you could just get comfortable, feel your feet on the ground. Just notice where you are right here, right now. And sense how you're feeling. Take a breath. And then the visualization I'm going to do, if you want to close your eyes, you can. It works if you could just, maybe put your gaze down so you can actually get into sensing this instead of just watching me or having your thoughts go elsewhere. But I want you to think about your decision from your brain. Okay, what are the things you normally think about? Do you think about the pros and cons? Do you think about what you should do, what other people are telling you to do? I want you just to notice, what are your thoughts around this decision from your brain? Now what I'd like you to do is I want you to imagine there's an elevator in your brain. And if you don't like the elevator, you can make it a glowing ball or just your awareness. But if you have an elevator, I want you to take all of your thoughts and I want you to see your thoughts float into the elevator. And then I want you to see the elevator door close. So see if you can't notice what it feels like when you don't have any thoughts floating around your brain. They're all safely tucked into the elevator. You can have them back. But all of a sudden the elevator starts to float down. And it floats down through your head. It floats through your neck. And then it floats down and it comes to rest in the spot next to your heart. And when the elevator door opens, you notice someone or something that you deeply care about. And I want you to feel, really notice what you feel when you see this person or this thing. Do you feel happy? Do you feel grateful? Does this person or this thing make you smile? I want you to say the word to yourself. Do you feel grateful? Do you feel love? Do you feel happiness? Do you feel care, compassion? Pick a word and breathe it in and just feel what it feels like when this heart space truly opens. Now I want you to think about that decision again, but think about it through your heart. Try to keep yourself from going back to your head. Think about it through your heart. What is your heart saying to you right now about that decision? Is it different? Is it different? Make note. Make note of that. Now I want you to say goodbye to the person or the thing that made you feel good. And the elevator closes and it starts to float down. It floats down through your diaphragm, through your stomach. And it comes to rest right in this place, right below your navel. This is your point of strength. This is your will. In many modalities, they call this your core. And I want you to think of a time where you spoke up and said something or did something in spite of your fear. And how did that feel? And I want you to say the word courage to yourself and have it float down and just hold it right in the middle here. Now I want you to think about that decision. What is your gut saying to you? Is it different? Is it different than what you heard from your head and your heart? Make note of it. Okay, you come back. This is something you can practice daily. As you start opening, as Otto Scharmer says in his book Theory U, and work from an open mind, an open heart, and an open will. I mean, if you think about it, how many leaders, there's such an oversight that they create mission statements based on market needs and revenue and not really including what truly inspires people. Or how many teams have you been on where you make plans and steps and deliverables, but you don't stop and ask people, what is it that you really want to contribute? What is the vision of what you have, of the end result? What are you afraid might happen along the way? What difference it would make if we ask people from the heart and from our will and really listen, to their doubts, to their fears, to their desires. What difference would that make? So you can use this in listening. And the emotions, if you heard me say them, is that we open our mind with curiosity, which again is difficult. We tend to want to analyze and tell people things and what's right and try to fix them. But we use curiosity to open our mind. We use care, compassion, gratitude, whatever it is that you feel. When you saw that person or that thing that made you feel good, that's how we open our heart. And courage is what opens our core. So you can use this in listening. In the book, there is a model because, you still how do I use it? Do I just go in and I listen? But you want to start the conversation first really looking at what it is we're trying to accomplish here. So this is a dream model, desired outcome, reflect, explore, acknowledge, and then make a plan. We always want to try to get to what would be the goal that would be important to you. It's not my goal going into this conversation. It is about, what's in it for me. We want to determine that. Do you want to be seen as a leader by others? Do you want more respect from your peers? Do you want just peace of mind? What is it that you want more of? So the conversation really has to be what the person wants, not necessarily what you want them to do. We start there, and then we go into this spontaneous process where we're listening from these centers and reflecting back what we hear. So we allow the person to tell their story. And then just share, well, this is what I hear you saying, and this is what I hear in terms of the emotions you feel. And I think maybe this is what's going on. And I could be wrong, and you can tell me, no, that's not quite it. But if I'm wrong, you'll probably say, that's not it, this is it. So we reflect, we explore, we ask questions. And then if they say, wow, yeah, okay, I get it, we ask, what is it you got? You need them to articulate the discovery, the new awareness, so it sticks before you make a plan. Sometimes it can be just one statement and one question. I was working with an executive team. Their leader was leaving after 14 years. It was a quasi-governmental organization. And he was retiring. And he said, you know, they seem to be paralyzed and they're just not moving forward with any plans. Can you go talk to them, coach them a little? So I went in and I said, well, I know that things need to start moving forward. I think that's what you want to do. So, but tell me, what is it that's going on right now? Well, the first guy started and he says, it's awful. And he told me like he was going to be retire. He'd been there for 35 years and he was just going to leave. And I said, okay, great, thank you. And then I asked the next person, so what's happening? Oh, it's awful. I'm just going to get my team. We're going to huddle up and we're going to just go do things. I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I went around the table, tell me what's happening. And each person told me how awful this thing was. And once they were done, I said, wow, I hear what's going on. I hear that you're not happy about him leaving. You're probably sad because you really liked him, that you're afraid of what's going to happen with the new person coming in. And this was going to be a board-appointed position. Maybe you're even angry that you don't get to be a part of this decision-making. And I heard it in the words that they said, and I reflected it back to them. And they said, yeah, that's it. I said, okay. With all that on the table, tell me, what do you know to be true right now in this very moment? And what do they know to be true? The guy was leaving. So after a long pause, where they looked at me, huh? Somebody finally said, our director's leaving. I said, okay, since that's the only thing you know to be true, what is it you need to do? Another long pause. And then the head of HR said, well, I guess we need to shore up our succession planning so we could weather any new leader. I said, great, how can I help you? But you see, they were so stuck in their emotions, and when people get stuck in their emotions, they don't know what it really is. You have to help them to put it out on the table so they could look at what is their fear, what is their anger about. You help them to look at it, then you could step back and say, so what's really going on? Or maybe you just put out what you think it is, and then again, they can tell you whether this is true or not. And then we can move through that. Because, we can't do this ourselves. Did you know you can't tickle yourself? Did you know that? You try. You can't tickle yourself. Brain says, oh, I know what you're doing, and it stops you. It's the same thing when you try to evaluate your own thoughts. The brain says, no, I know what you're doing, and it doesn't really let you do that. You might cogitate the same thing over and over and over, but it doesn't allow you to break through that barrier. It takes someone else. You might read something, but somebody, when they ask you that question, where you go, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way, and of course, but I couldn't see it. That truly makes the difference. So when we listen from our brain, we do hear belief systems and assumptions. We do hear that. What is it that frames that I'm holding that's keeping me back? I know as Richard Boyatsa said, you can't see beyond the box until you see the box in the first place. So we help people see what the box is. We hear that from the brain, but from the heart, we really hear what they want and what they value. And sometimes what they value may be getting in the way. Sometimes first-time supervisors, or people that are promoted to manager, they valued great results, and now they have to get results through others, and it's kind of difficult to let go. So the desires and the values, but we also hear doubt based on past experiences. And so what is keeping me from truly moving forward because of what has happened before? And then from the core, we hear their fears, and then what they can't let go of. Again, in almost any transition, it's they have to learn new things, but they have to let go of old things. And it's often the let go, that's the most difficult. These are the things that we hear from these three places. So what I'd like to do is I want to, real quickly, I'm going to read you a case. The book explains all this and how you can do it, and then there's two chapters of case studies so you can actually see this in action. But I'd like to see, I'm going to read you some things, and I'm going to walk you through, again, just real quickly through your head, your heart, and your gut, and I want you to see if you hear anything differently when I read this to you. Okay, so the case is that Anna wanted a promotion. She was a stellar performer, and nobody could argue with her work skills and her abilities. She was really great. But the problem was that she was having a difficulty with her peers, and in meetings she got a little cynical, sarcastic, rolled her eyes, cut people off. And they really weren't happy with her. And her boss basically said, until you have respect from your peers, it's going to be difficult to promote you. So I want you to start by first being curious. So I didn't walk you through this, but again, before you go and you talk to someone, you start first by opening your mind. And we open our mind with curiosity. So the first thing you want to do is take all those thoughts and put it in that elevator, or let them float away, whatever works for you. And say the word curious. Curious. I don't know how this person sees the world, and I don't know the answers. If you already know what it is you're going to say to them, there's nothing left. If you already know how they're going to respond, they will respond in that way. So can you be curious? So listen with curiosity. She started the conversation with me by saying, I know my peers have trouble with me, but I've been getting good results for years. If they only listened to what I have to say and try my approaches, they would see how it could help them. They keep doing things the old way and nothing gets done right. My boss won't put the right pressure on them, so I have to do it. You've heard people like that? So listening from your head, what would you ask her? What would you ask her? Would you be curious at what she has tried, if she's tried anything? Maybe you'd ask her, what else could you try? Generally, when we listen from our head, we get into a little problem solving. But you might want to know a little bit about, how she really believes people think, or why her boss isn't helping her. Okay, so that's from your brain. But now what I'd like you to do is, again, to pause, take a breath, and do that visualization where you see the elevator moving down, and it slowly floats down, and it comes to rest at your heart. And again, you see someone or something. When the door opens, that makes you smile, makes you feel good, and just feel that heart space opening. And I want you to try to listen to the next part of the conversation through your heart. And as you listen to the heart, just notice, what is it you'd like to ask her now? What might you say and what might you ask her? And see if it's different. So I asked Anna what she felt her purpose was as a team member. She said, I want us to be the best. I want our region to outshine the others. I want us all to win. So I asked her if her team members felt she wanted this for them. She said, well, they should know, but maybe they just don't understand why I want this. My intentions are good. I want them to do better. It will help us all if they step up. They would understand if they tried. Now, listening from your heart, what would you ask her? What would you ask her? Would it be different than when you were listening from your head? Would you want to know why she's so attached to them feeling that way? Is this so important? Is there a way that she could help other people to have those same desires? Does she even know what other people desire? What is she most worried about? What's frustrating her? Did you hear different things from your heart? So just make a note. What would you say and what would you ask her? So now what I'd like you to do is to, again, go back to your heart, and I want you to notice, say goodbye to that person or that thing. And I want you to let the elevator go down, and it comes to rest at your core. And I want you to feel the courage that emanates from here. Feel the strength of your core. Say the word courage to yourself. Now see if you can't listen through your core. She said to me, I do want to be seen as a leader, but if I change my way, why would they believe me? Aren't I being inauthentic if all of a sudden I'm the nice one? She paused and didn't say anything, and I just held the silence. Well, maybe I could start by having one-on-one meetings with people to show that I really am interested in their ideas. I am interested, you know. I do want them to know that. From your core, did you notice, really, what is she afraid of? What is she afraid of, really? What is she afraid to let go of? If she were not to be the one who knew, who would she be? And how would people see her? And isn't that not what's holding her back? Isn't that not? So I want you to notice, was it difficult for you to go to any of these centers? And we all listen from our head. But most of you will be able to access one of these three centers easily, in addition to your head. If you're a helper type person, you access your heart. But it's the gut that will be most difficult. If you're like me and you're a risk taker, then it's easy for me to access my gut, but this is my point of vulnerability. And it's hard for me to go to my heart. But whenever I'm with a client and I don't know what to say, if I go to my heart, boom, it shows up. And so when I run people through these exercises and they get to listen to each other, it's amazing the questions that show up from the head, the heart, and the gut. And I ask you, if you noticed it was difficult, just try it. Listen to someone differently tonight, from your heart or from your gut. And what comes forth in that conversation? The point is that we want to get people to stop and think about their thinking, not tell them what to do, but just to get them to stop. And if you listen with your entire nervous system and just allow it to come forth, what might happen? You know, there was some great research where they mapped the brain of rappers, and it's the same process. Rappers know where it is they want to go to, but then in the process of creating, their analytical brain goes quiet. And then what comes forth is what they say, and it's the same process. If you can quiet your analytical brain and allow yourself to give voice to your heart and your gut, your nervous system, maybe people will stop and question themselves, and maybe they will see other possibilities. So there are things in the book, yes, you have to have some trust. You need to have an intention for their goal. You need to come in with some strong positive emotions. You can't be angry or disappointed with them because they'll then not listen to you. And you need to hold people in high regard, that I trust that you are able, you're resourceful, and that you can discover this on your own if I just ask the right questions. So my purpose is truly to help people to see things differently, to change the conversations in the workplace. In fact, what I always tell leaders is they really want you to be present more than they need you to be perfect. And if you can help people to actually stop and see their blind spots and their sources of resistance where it becomes present to them, yes, maybe they'll feel uncomfortable, maybe they'll be embarrassed, they'll be sad, they'll be angry, but then they'll grow. And we do this by courageously coaching people, but using conscious listening and just feeding back what we hear and what we sense so that they can see these things for themselves. So again, I really want to start changing the conversations we have so we are actually helping people not just do their jobs well, but to step into their highest selves. of who they are through conscious listening. So I hope that you join me and we start really listening to each other in a more powerful way. Thank you.
I think we have a few minutes for questions if anybody has a question that they would like to ask Marcia.
So a lot of what you said, I could see how it applies very easily to one-on-one conversations.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for doing this with a large group of people at once?
Yeah. Well, the example that I gave you with the executive team was an entire group of people. And so it's the same thing. You want to have a combined goal. What is it we're trying to achieve here that is difficult to reach? But again, always allow people to tell their stories first. So oftentimes we say, oh, I don't want people to vent and I don't want them to complain. But there's a seed in the complaint. There's something you're going to hear in the complaint. It's like, that's the thing that's holding them back. And so you want to listen for that. And then when you hold that up, it's like, well, I hear you say this, and yet you said this, and it kind of like collides. Or I can tell that this is really important to you, and yet you're being asked to do something else. Is that the problem? So you listen to their story, and then you're going to find in there what's the problem. You feed that back and then ask the question, and that makes the difference. So you can do that with an entire group. It's just that once they get into the complaining thing, it can really take off. But that's okay, because we have to have it out on the table. My first job was in a mental hospital. And they did this brilliantly. Whenever they had an organizational change, or a layoff, they let everybody sit in a circle, like group, and they said, okay, what's going on? And everybody talked about they were angry, they were sad, and they got it out. And the leader didn't have to promise anything. It was just, take the pressure cooker off, let's just take a look at it. And okay, now that we know that, what's stopping you from moving forward? What is it we need to focus on? That we could actually put our energy into making some change. So absolutely it works with the group. And there's some examples in the book. Thank you for that question.
So you've talked mostly about trying to help someone else see their blind spots.
Yeah.
What about the reverse, where you want someone else to help you
see your blind spot?
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's why it's really good. I suggest in the book that you work through these things together, because I have a coach and I can't see my blind spot, and yet she's so amazing. She'll say, right, one question, coaching, one question, I'll go, of course. Yeah, but I can't do it myself. So it's really great when you have someone who will really listen and not want to give you great advice and they're just waiting for you to shut up so they can tell you what to do. That's not helpful. But ask the question that makes me stop and question myself. And boom, I break down that barrier, I see something else, and I'm done. One question. So yeah, I seek it out. If I'm stuck, I seek it out, always. So again, there's a lot of exercises in the book, and so you can do these things together. Yeah, and a lot of stuff on my website too, outsmartyourbrain.com. A lot of cases and exercises, and the visualization is on the website, and there's an assessment, rate your discomfort zone, so you can assess how well you deal with other people's discomfort, because you have to kind of like be okay and let them go through that, and just breathe, and they'll be okay. You don't have to fix them, and then see what comes out on the other side. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, Marcia, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to reading the book and practicing then.